If you've been following education in Pennsylvania, you know the whole system is in the middle of a massive reset. And we're not just talking about one new program here. No, this is a complete overhaul of how schools are funded, how reading gets taught, and really, how the state is tackling its biggest, most persistent challenges. So, okay, let's dive into this story of major change.
You know, this quote just perfectly captures the moment we're in. The state has made a huge promise to fix its education system. But if you're a teacher, a parent, or a student on the ground, that promise, it's still very much a work in progress. It's like the journey has absolutely started, but the finish line, well, that's still a long way off.
And this right here, this is the central conflict. On one side, you've got this landmark court ruling that completely changed the game, demanding fair and adequate funding for every single student. But on the other side, that ruling is running headfirst into decades of really deep-rooted problems. We're talking massive funding gaps, skyrocketing costs, and learning challenges that just won't go away. This tension is what defines everything that's happening right now.
So let's start with the thing that kicked this all off. This entire reset didn't start with a new policy or a new politician. Nope. It began with a legal earthquake that absolutely shook the foundations of the state's education system.
For years, the whole conversation about school funding felt like it was just stuck on a loop, right? Lawsuits were filed, reports were written, but nothing really changed. Then, boom, 2023 happens. A court declares the entire system unconstitutional. So now the debate is no longer about if there's a problem. The only question is, how fast can the state actually fix it?
Okay, so with that legal mandate in place, the state is starting to put some serious money on the table. But that brings us to the next big piece of the puzzle. Where is all that cash really going?
The state budget is throwing in a huge new investment, over $900 million for the next school year. And look, that's a significant number. It shows a real commitment to actually follow through on that court ruling. But this is where the math starts to get a little tricky.
You see, all that new money is pouring into a system where costs are rising even faster. School districts are fighting to compete on teacher salaries. The need for special education services is growing every year. And just the basic costs for buses and keeping old buildings running are through the roof. And then there's one more huge financial driver that we really need to focus on: cyber charters.
So it's really crucial to understand how this works. When a student decides to switch to a cyber charter school, their home district has to send a tuition payment right along with them. But the district's own costs for its school buildings, its bus routes, its staff, they don't shrink. It's kind of like paying rent on 2 apartments at the same time, and you can imagine the immense budget stress that creates.
All right, let's shift gears now. Let's move away from the budget spreadsheets and talk about what's actually happening inside the classroom, because this is where all these new policies and financial pressures directly impact students. One of the biggest academic shifts going on right now is this huge statewide push for what's called the science of reading. It's basically a move toward teaching methods that are grounded in actual research on how kids' brains learn to read. And it's not just about buying new textbooks, it's a systemic change. It requires schools to adopt proven curricula, train their teachers in a very specific way, and jump in the moment a student starts to struggle. The real test isn't just having the policy, it's making sure it's done well in every single school.
And when you look at the data, you can see why these strategies are so needed. Academic recovery since the pandemic, it's happening, but it is slow and it is really uneven. Reading scores are inching up, but math is still a major hurdle. For most families, it just doesn't feel like a full turnaround yet, especially in communities that were hit the hardest.
Which brings us to a fundamental question. I mean, you can have the best curriculum and all the funding in the world, but what does it matter if you don't have a qualified, consistent teacher in front of the kids?
And this is the stark reality of the teacher pipeline in Pennsylvania. You've got thousands of empty teaching positions all across the state. At the exact same time, the number of new teachers graduating from college just isn't keeping up. This shortage is the ultimate roadblock. It limits every single reform effort we've talked about so far.
So, beyond the big, obvious challenges like funding and staffing, there are a couple of foundational issues that can stop progress dead in its tracks. Let's call them the hidden hurdles.
The first hurdle is just getting kids to show up. A student is considered chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of the school year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up to 18 days. That's almost a full month of learning. Statewide, this rate shot way up after the pandemic and has been stubbornly high ever since, which makes it nearly impossible for any real learning recovery to happen. And it's so important to debunk the common myths here. Chronic absenteeism isn't just about kids not wanting to go to school.
No, it's a really complex problem that's tied to real-world barriers. Things like unreliable transportation, housing instability, health issues, and sometimes a school climate where a student just doesn't feel safe or supported.
And this is leading to a really profound shift in thinking. Providing for a student's basic needs is now being seen as a core academic strategy. Take universal free breakfast. It's been shown to improve both attendance and focus. It's a simple idea, really, and it's an acknowledgement of a truth that every teacher already knows. Kids just can't learn when they're hungry, tired, or stressed out.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. With so many moving parts, how can any of us track whether Pennsylvania is actually making progress? Well, let's put together a simple scoreboard.
Here are the 5 key things to watch. First, adequacy funding. Is the new money actually going to the school districts that need it the most? Second, literacy quality. Is the real focus on high-quality teacher training, or is it just about new books? Third, attendance. Are those chronic absenteeism rates finally starting to come down? Fourth, the teacher pipeline. Is the shortage getting any better, especially in high-poverty schools? And finally, cyber charter reform. Are any new rules actually saving districts money and improving oversight? These 5 questions, they'll tell you almost everything you need to know about where this is all heading.
So, to wrap this all up, Pennsylvania schools have a new constitutional mandate, a new playbook for teaching, and a historic level of investment. The whole system is changing direction. But this leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? At the end of the day, will winning this fight be measured by the billions of dollars spent or by the long-term success of every single student?